Begin today the Gemara on the Lamed base, 3 lines down from the top of the Yamud. It said in the Mishnah, V'cheres hadraini, that a certain kind of earthenware is also a problem to be used if it comes from a guy in Avoda Zara. So the Gemara explains what exactly is the story with this earthenware. My hadraini, what's the story with this earthenware? Amar Rav Yudah Amar Shmuel, Cheres shel hadrainus keiser. It's the earthenware that was used by the Caesar Hadrianus, and he would use it for his army when they went out to war. And the Gemara here explains exactly what they used it for. Kiyasar Avdimi, when Avdimi came, Omar, he explained as follows. Karka besula hoisa shalei avda adam eilam. This was a very good quality ground that was never planted there ever. So they used this good quality ground then to go and plant a vineyard there, vinota, and they planted a vineyard with very, very good quality grapes. Then v'romelei lechamre begulfi chivri. And then when they produced the wine, they put this wine into white earthenware. White meaning brand new earthenware. Umaitzelo lechamrayu, and then it would absorb the wine. In general, earthenware absorbs into its walls whatever contents it has. But over here, they would specifically take brand new earthenware so it could absorb the maximum possible of this wine. And then a mizbrilo b'chaspi, they broke it into small shards, small pieces, and v'doru bahadayu, and they would carry it with them when they were going out, fighting and going from place to place. And wherever they were, wherever they came, what they would do is they would take out a little piece of this broken shard, and they would soak it in water, and v'shasel, and they would drink, and the water had a very strong flavor of wine. This was the invention of Hadrianus Caesar that was used by his army, and then this became a common practice by people. And therefore the Mishnah says that this is what's called Cheres Hadraini. This Hadrainian earthenware that was used for this purpose that has wine in it, so if it comes from a guy, it's soaked with wine. Now, Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi said about this, that what they did worked so well that Virisha in Shalanu, the first and the best quality wine that we produce from our grapes, Kishlishi Shalahan, is only as good as the third time you would use this earthenware to be soaked in water. That's how good this earthenware was. It absorbed wine so well, and it was such a good quality vineyard that it was very powerful. It had a lot of wine in it. That's what our Mishnah is talking about. Okay, so now the Gemara has an Iboya. Iboya, the Shaila is asked, Mao lismech behen karya mita. So these broken pieces of earthenware that has this wine, yayin from a guy that's absorbed in it, are you allowed to take this, not to use, to drink from it, but you want to just use it to support the legs of your bed? What's the shaila here? Do I say, Reitze b'kiyumai, since he desires that it should exist? Which is an issue when it comes to anything that's takrevis Avoda Zara. This is something the Gemara will discuss later in the Masechta, that anything that is takrevis Avoda Zara is aser. Not only is it aser to have anah from, you're not even allowed to do anything that will perpetuate its existence. So over here, he's reitze b'kiyumai. He wants it to continue to exist. He's using it, but how? Al yedei davar acher, through something else. Meaning over here, he's not actually using the wine itself. If he were to use this wine itself, he's going to have anah from the wine itself. Then we know that there's a problem. That's what the Mishnah was saying here. The cheres hadraini is aser. But the question is, he's not going to be using the wine itself. He's using the earthenware that has this wine absorbed in it in order for it to be supporting a bed. So it's al yedei davar acher, it's through something else. So maybe shari, maybe it's allowed. Aser, or maybe it's not allowed. Since he's using this earthenware that has this forbidden wine absorbed in it, he says reitze b'kiyumai of this wine from Avoda Zara, so he can't use even just the earthenware to support his bed. Tashema, so the Gemara says that let's see what the halacha here is, and this is Machlekes Amirayim. The Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Yechanan argued about this. Chad asar. One of them said that this will be forbidden, and v'chad shari. And another opinion is that this will be allowed. And according to some Gershos in the Gemara, it adds v'hilchase keman de asar. We follow like the opinion that says that it's forbidden. So the Gemara brings a question. The question was asked on the opinion that says that it's allowed. The Brisa says as follows: Hadrudin or hadardurin, which are small jugs, or v'harukvois, large jugs or large barrels, from goyim, that have in it absorption of wine that's forbidden. So yain shel Yisrael konas behen, wine of a yid that's being stored in these barrels or jugs. Also b'shtia, it's not allowed for drinking, but umutar ba'ana, you're allowed to have ana from this wine. What the Brisa here brings is actually following an opinion that we had before in the Mishnah, which was the opinion of the Chachamim in the Mishnah that said before regarding such a case, wine of a yid that's stored in the barrel of a guy, that it's only going to be also to drink. There's another opinion though in the Mishnah. Rab Meir says that wine stored in these barrels will be completely asr bahana. But now here the Gemara actually brings in this Brisa a third opinion. Hey, it's Shimon ben Gudal of Nei b'noi shel Rabbi Gamliel. Shimon ben Gudal testified in front of the son of Rabbi Gamliel, al Rabbi Gamliel, regarding Rabbi Gamliel himself, sheshasa mimenu ba'akei, that he drank from this wine that was stored in a barrel or a jug that had a wine absorbed from a guy. So he held that it's completely mutter. We're not talking here about wine that's definitely yayin hesach. We're talking about stam wine of a guy. The Chachamim were geyser not to drink from, or not to have a from either. So according to this opinion, he testified that Rabbi Gamliel held that if wine of a yid is being stored in the barrel of a guy, it's no concern. It's not included in the gzeira of the Chachamim. You can drink from it. It's allowed to drink. But the Brisa says, "V'lo haydulai." They did not agree to this that he said in the name of Rabbi Gamliel. Okay, now then the Brisa says, "Noides shalev dekechavim." When it comes to noides, which are barrels or maybe leather sacks that are from goyim, that you want to store wine in it. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, oime mishum Rabbi Yeshua ben Kfusai. So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said about this in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Kfusai, that aser lases mehen shtichin lechamayr. You can't use these leather sacks to turn it into a saddle for a donkey. Okay, so now it's this last part of the Braisa here, which is the question on what we said before. Because here you're taking this leather sack cloth that was used to store wine of a guy in it, and now you're not going to be having a nod directly from that wine, but you want to use it as a saddle. And what did he say? Rab Shimon Gamliel said that it's not allowed. Now, just to clarify, obviously this opinion of Rab Shimon Gamliel is not following the Tanakama of this Braisa that said that there is no Isser Hana from anything, any barrel or jug that the guy stored his wine. The guy had wine in it and has the absorption of the wine of the guy. It's only also to drink. This last opinion of Rab Shimon Gamliel is following the opinion of Rab Meir in the Mishnah that says that this wine would be asr bahana. But what he's saying is, although it's asr bahana, but if you're using the actual leather sack itself and turning it into a saddle, it's not a problem. So the Gemara said, this is another exact example of him wanting to use this. He's not using directly the wine of this leather sack, but he's using it because he wants to use it now for a saddle. So he wants it to exist, not for the wine itself, but for a saddle, but he wants it to be. And in the Brisa it says over here that Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says that this is aser. So how does the Gemara before bring one opinion, either Rabbi Yechanan or Rabbi Elazar, that says that it's allowed? Okay, so the Gemara says, and according to your opinion, you say that any time there's something that has the absorption of the wine of a guy, now it'll be asa to use, not only to have a nor from the wine itself that's absorbed, but you can't use it for any other kind of use. That's what's called kiyum al yedei davar achi. You can't use it at all, according to your opinion. So if so, kankanim shal evde kechavim, buying any barrels from a guy, litzru lemizvan. It shouldn't be allowed to buy. We shouldn't be allowed to buy these barrels from a guy, even if you're not going to use it to store wine. If you're going to use it to store wine, then it's a problem because your wine will get the taste from the wine that's absorbed in the walls. So then you're actually getting the hanor from the wine itself. But according to your reasoning that says that kiyum al yedei davar acher is also a problem. So if let's say you want to buy a barrel from a guy, you're not going to store wine in it. You're going to store something else in it, or you're using it for some other use, or you want to then you're buying it wholesale. You want to sell it retail. It should be aser, because this is kiyum al yedei davar acher. You want the barrels that happen to have that wine of the guy of the Avoda Zara absorbed in it. It should also be a problem. So umayshna noidais umayshna kankanim. What would be the difference if we're talking about leather sacks or if we're talking about barrels? It should be the same halacha. That if it has the wine of Avoda Zara absorbed in it, you shouldn't be allowed to use it for anything. So on this, the Gemara says that Omar Rave, or the other gersi here is Ela Omar Rave, that Rave therefore explains this differently, and he says that if you look at this case that we brought, that you're turning this leather sack into a saddle, there's a different reason why it's aser. Not because of the point that we said before, because you want the wine, it's kiyum al yedei davar acher, by using it as a saddle, you still are using it with the wine in it, it's going to be a problem. That's not the issue. What is the issue? Gzeire, over here, chachamim were geyser as follows. Shema yifkan noidai, if a person's traveling, and he also has leather sacks of wine, and it might get a hole in it, and what is he going to do? V'itlenu, he'll take a piece of this saddle that he formed from this leather sack of a wine of a guy, and he'll take a piece and he'll use it to sew and to close the hole that there is in his barrel of wine or in his sackcloth of wine. So over here there's excited, and then once he sews it with this piece of a sack from a guy, now he's actually going to end up having hana from the actual wine that's absorbed in this sackcloth, because now it's being used actually as a patch for his sack that's holding the wine in it. That was the Gzeira. That's why specifically this is Gzeira not regarding using any barrel. Using any barrel from a guy, if you're not using it to store wine in it, according to this opinion, is not a problem. But specifically regarding these leather sacks, where you could use a piece from that leather sack of the guy, even after it was made into a saddle, you can now use it to patch your leather sack. There was this Gzeira, that this may happen. Okay, so now the Gemara asks a question on the other opinion. According to the opinion that says that that if you're using anything that has the absorption of this wine, even if you don't need that wine itself, but you need the barrel itself, and you're using it for something else, as the example the Gemara said before, you want to use it to support the leg of a bed, so that's aser. So the question is, Maishna kan kanem deshoru. So why is it that with any barrels that a guy used once to store wine in it, why do we know, and that this Gemara accepts as a fact, that we know that you can buy it from a guy? As long as you're not going to store your wine in it, why would that be allowed? You're telling me that you can't use these cheres hadrayani, right? These earthenware that have a lot of wine absorbed in it, that can't be used to support the leg of a bed, so then you shouldn't be allowed to use any barrel of a guy for any use. So the Gemara answers, it's not the same thing. I'll answer you and say, Hasam lesil is nay. By any barrel of a guy, even if it has some wine absorbed in it, but it's very little. It doesn't absorb that much. Over here, we're talking about something unique. Over here, we're talking about these cheres hadrayani, as the Gemara described before, that they were brand new earthenware, that they had very strong wine that was placed in it, and it absorbed a lot of wine in it. As the Gemara described before, that the wine that came out from it was extremely tasty. So over here, you have so much wine absorbed in it. Over here, even if you're not using it to store wine in it or to drink from it, but you're just using it to support a bed, here it's going to be yasser, dafka in this case. And the Rishonim explain this. The reason is because when you have so much wine that's absorbed in it, that wine actually becomes like part and parcel of the actual cheres itself. It strengthens the cheres. It's part of the makeup of this piece of earthenware itself. So if you're supporting the bed, it's like you're supporting the bed with this forbidden wine. That's mamish, very much part of what this cheres is. But by a regular barrel that has just very little forbidden wine that's absorbed in it, you can buy from a guy as long as you're not using the barrels to store wine in it. Right, so according to this conclusion of the Gemara, the answer that I gave before about the saddles, why you can't make saddles out of the leather sack of a guy that stored wine in it, it's for the reason that the Gemara said before. That's a special gezeira, because you may come to then use it to patch the leather sacks of a yid.
It looks fakir because supporting the bed,
yeah,
that in and of itself is never going to be used for drinking wine, for sure. Whereas the other one, with a barrel, it could possibly come across...
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. So that Gzeira, Chacham, we're not going to such a Gzeira. But as I mentioned, the Rishonim say the Svara, when you're supporting the bed, and it's so absorbed with wine, that wine now becomes part of the makeup of the cheres itself. It's like it's what holds this cheres together. It strengthens it. So your bed is actually being supported by this very forbidden wine itself. No. And that's why it's asr. Mm-hmm. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to a detail that was said before in the Braise, that it was Yeshua. Let's say again the name before. We had before the testimony of Shimon, that is Shimon ben Guda, and came and testified about Rabbi Gamliel. That Rabbi Gamliel drank from wine that was stored in barrels that were used by Goyim. That's a pretty, very lenient opinion. So before it said that when he testified this, they did not admit to what he said. They said that he's making a mistake. Rabbi Gamliel didn't do this. The Gemara asks in another brayse, it says the exact opposite. V'Rav Mini, I'll ask you a contradiction. A brayse says, Yain haba b'rikvoy shelo v'kichavim, wine that is being brought in these large barrels of goyim, asa b'shtiyah. You're not allowed to drink from it, but umutar ba'ana, you can have a na from this. And as I mentioned, this is the opinion of the Chachamim as well in the Mishnah. Now, hey, it's Shimon ben Guda. L'fnei b'noish Rabbi Gamliel. Shimon ben Guda testified in front of the son of Rabbi Gamliel, al Rabbi Gamliel, regarding Rabbi Gamliel, sheshasa mimenu ba'akai, that he did drink from this wine stored in the barrels of goyim in the city of Akai. And here, in this brayse, it says, v'hoidulai, and they agreed to him. They agreed to this testimony that he brought from Rabbi Gamliel. So we clearly see that they did agree to him, and in the brayse before it said that they did not accept his testimony. So the Gemara answers, in the first brayse, when it said that they did not agree to him, that means kol siyatay. All of the other chachamim that were there, they did not agree to his testimony. But his own son that was there, Rabbi Gamliel's son that was there, he did agree to this testimony. According to this, you have to actually be greatest in the brayse, not v'hoidu, but v'hoideloi. That he, the son, he admitted to his testimony. Or the Gemara says that there's two different people here. Guda, before it said that who came and testified about this, it was Shimon ben Guda with an aleph, and V'gud Dalachud. In this brayse it says that another individual with a very similar sounding name, his name was Shimon ben Guda with an ayin, he came and testified about the behavior of Rabbi Gamliel. And so what basically happened is, when Shimon ben Guda with an aleph came and testified, they didn't accept his testimony. But when another individual came and testified as well, now they said, oh, someone else is saying the same thing, then they accepted this, that Rabbi Gamliel actually drank from this wine. Okay, going back to the Mishnah, it said, V'oires levuvin, that when you have the skin of an animal that you see that was opened up, and it's called oires levuvin, that's something which you know was used for Avoda Zara, and therefore it's aser. So the Gemara describes what this oires levuvin is. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in Abraham, says, oir lavov. What is this skin of an animal that's called lavov? Kol shekarua keneged alev, that it's torn open right in the place of the heart of the animal, v'kadur, and it's cut out, kimin aruba, like you cut out a hole to make a skylight, and it's a round opening that's cut open. So that's, we know that the Goyim, they had this custom of tearing open the animal when it was still alive, and take out the heart and sacrifice it for Avoda Zara. And therefore the Gemara says, another detail, Yeshal of Kaira Dam, if there's some spot of blood on it or dried blood on it, then you know aser. Then it's not allowed, because we know that they pulled it out, they tore it out when the animal was still alive, as the custom is for Avoda Zara. Einol of Kaira Dam, however, if there is no dried blood on it, then mutter. Then it will be allowed, because that means that it was just cut open after the animal was killed, and it's just the hide of an animal. So it's allowed. This last point there, this distinction if there's dried blood on it or not, that's only if it wasn't salted yet. But once it was salted, aser. Then even if you see no spot of blood, it's still going to be forbidden, because at this point, it's possible that when they salted it, it removed the blood, but could be it still was from the animal of Avoda Zara that was used for sacrificing Avoda Zara. Now the Mishnah said another detail. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, "Bizman shakera shaloi ogol." If you see that the shape of what was torn open is round, then aser, then it's forbidden. Mashuch, but if it's in a straight line, then mutter, then it'll be allowed. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yosef said that Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel that halacha Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. That we paskin like what Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says here. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye says to Rav Yosef, halacha, you're quoting that it was said that the halacha here is like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Meklal de pligi. Should we understand from this that the Tanakama argued with Rav Shimon ben Gamliel? Not necessarily. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is just adding a detail here. That only if it was open and a round shape, then it's aser. But who says the Tanakama argues in this? Amalei, so Rav Yosef said, my nafkalach mina. What is the difference if the Tanakama does argue or not? If the Tanakama doesn't argue, then for sure that halacha is like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Amalei, so Abaye says, and Abaye was the student of Rav Yosef, and he says to him, Gemara Zemartete, that what you're teaching us, a halacha, this is just like a song. If you're telling me that the halacha is like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, so you're telling me something that means that the Tanakama disagrees, and that's why you're telling me that halacha is like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. So this is just sound like a song. You're telling me this for no reason, because really the Tanakama agrees. So therefore, he wanted to know that it doesn't mean that you're telling me that the Tanakama argues in this. Okay, the next thing it said on the Mishnah, Basar hanichnas la'avodas kechavim. If you see that there's meat that's being brought in to be used in the house of an Avoda Zara, mutter, and you take that meat before it enters into this place of Avoda Zara, it's allowed to have anah from this. Obviously, you're not allowed to eat from this. This is meat that was slaughtered by a guy. It's a nevela meat, but you're allowed to have anah from it. It hasn't been used for Avoda Zara yet. Says the Gemara man Tana, who is the Tana of our Mishnah? Rab Chia bar Abba, Rab Yechanan, the loiker Rab Elazar. What it says in our Mishnah does not follow the opinion of Rab Elazar or Rab Eliezer. The Ikar Rab Elazar, because if it's Rab Elazar, Ha'amar Rab Elazar says, Stam machsheves oivek yechavim, that anytime a guy shechts an animal, we can assume that what was his thought when he shechted it was l'shem, was avodas kechavim. He was shechting it for the purpose of Avoda Zara. So even if we just see that this is an animal that was slaughtered by a guy even before it's brought into the house of worship of Avoda Zara, it doesn't matter. If you know that a guy is the one that slaughtered this, it's not only nevela meat, it's meat that was slaughtered for Avoda Zara, so it's takreves Avoda Zara that should be aser. In our Mishnah, it's saying that before it's brought into the house of Avoda Zara, it's mutter, because our Mishnah is not following like what Rabbi Eliezer said. Now, the next thing the Mishnah said, Vayotze, if it comes out from the house of Avoda Zara, aser, then this will be forbidden. So the Mishnah says, because this is then meat that was in the house of Avoda Zara. It was there long enough to be sacrificed for Avoda Zara. So if this meat that comes out will be takrevis Avoda Zara, which is asr to have any anah from it. Says the Gemara, my time, what's the reason for this? Because yevshir the leket takrevis Avodas kechavim. Once it was inside this place, it's impossible that it wasn't sacrificed for Avoda Zara. Says the Gemara, Mani, who is the Tana of our Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseiri. It's Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseiri. Because the Tanya we learned in Abraisa, Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseiri, Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseiri said, Minayin l'takrevis Avodas kechavim. From where do we know that anything that was sacrificed for Avodah Zara, shemetame ba'oil, that it causes a tumah? If it's in the same tent, under the same roof as something else, it causes a tumah just like a dead body. Shenan, because the pasuk says, "Vayitzamdu lebal pa'or, vayechlu zivchei mesim," that they desired to serve Avodah Zara, which is pa'or, and then they ate from zivchei mesim, which means from Avodah Zara. And therefore we say ma meis metame ba'oil. If it's comparing what's sacrificed for Avodah Zara to be like a dead body, so just like a dead body causes tumah under a tent, after krevis Avodas kechavim, metame ba'oil. So too, anything that is brought for Avodah Zara will also cause the same tumah like it's in a tent, when it's in a tent, like a dead body. And the Gemara already actually brought this before. The source of this inyan in the beginning of the Perek, the Rishonim actually ask, why does suddenly the Gemara wake up here and say that this is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira, and it brings this brayse that Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira said this? The Gemara before brought basically the same idea in the beginning of the Perek, not quoting it in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira. So the Rishonim answer here, the detail the Gemara is adding is, before the Gemara was saying that we compare, we learn out from Zivchei Mesim, and then we learn from Egla Rufa to say that it's Asr Bahana. Here, the Gemara is adding that it's Metame like a mace, that it causes Tumah like a mace under a tent. That's a detail that Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira said, and the reason the Gemara says that we see this from our Mishnah is because there's something the Mishnah adds here that it never said before. And the Mishnah here says, Mipnei Shuhu Kizivchei Mesim. When it uses that term Zivchei Mesim, it's coming to say this point that Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira said that it will be Metame like a mace. Okay, the next thing the Mishnah said, you see a guy that's going to a tarfus, which refers to going into a church or to a place where there's Avodah Zara. So he's on his way there. Asur and losses velosas imam. Don't do business with him. Don't sell him anything, because this will cause him to then go and thank his Avodah Zara or use what you sold to him for Avodah Zara. Shmuel said, a guy that's going on his way to his church, ba'alicha, on his way there, asur. Then, like the Mishnah says, you shouldn't sell him things. The azal umaydi kamei avodas kechavim. He will go and thank his Avodah Zara for this. But chazara, if he's coming out though, he's returning on his way back home, mutter, then it's allowed. Why? Because mayda hava. He was there, but now he's going back home. You'll sell him something. He's not going to turn around and go back to the Avodah Zara to thank for his good luck that he just had. However, Yisrael, if you see a Yid that unfortunately is on his way going to serve Avodah Zara, then Bahalicha Mutter, in his case, on his way going to the Avodah Zara, it is allowed to sell him something. And the reason is because Dilma Hadabe. Adarabba, by a Yid we say, maybe you'll see his good luck, he'll actually have a Hidur Tshuva. This will be a reason for him to turn around and not go to the Avodah Zara. V'lo yazal, and he won't go. But Chazare, however, if he's on his way back, then Aser. Then that means that this is a Yid that was already inside the house of Avodah Zara. Once a Yid falls to that low place and he's serving Avoda Zara, then even on his way out, it's forbidden to sell him something, because Kivin the Avik Bey, since we see that he's tied so tightly to Avoda Zara, Mahada Hada Azal, he may turn around and not go back to the Avoda Zara and thank for his good luck that he had that you're selling him here. Back to Gemara about Tanya, and a brayso we learned regarding a yid that Yisrael ahoylech letarfus, a yid that's on his way going to a church, bein balicha and bein bechazara, both, if he's on his way in and he's on his way out, aser. Either way, it's going to be aser. Amar Ravashi, so Ravashi answers, Kitanya, that what is that price is speaking about? Be Yisrael Mumer. Speaking about a yid that is like a meshumid, he completely is a heretic and rejected Yiddishkeit altogether, and therefore over here you don't have the svara that we mentioned before, that on his way in you could sell him something because he may then have a hirir tshuva. Over here we can't expect that to happen. Adarabba, you'll cause him a stumbling block. He'll be nichshal to go and thank the Avoda Zara, the Vadi Azal. He's definitely going to go, and therefore you can't sell him not on the way in, and not even on the way out, because a yid, when he falls even lower, that on his way out there's a concern he may go back in and thank his Avoda Zara. So that's the difference between this. So this is basically the guy, the yid, and the Yisrael Mumer, which is on the lowest level in this concept.